Welcome back to America's Hope. I'm joined now by someone I consider a good friend, a friend of the program, as well as someone that I really know and love personally, Richard Taite. He's one of the foremost experts on addiction in the United States, with a career that's built on a foundation of personal transformation and an unwavering commitment to helping others. Let me make that important to you, because he does have an unwavering commitment to helping others. Through extraordinary resilience, having lost 25 years to addiction before achieving 21 years of sobriety. It's an achievement that fuels his passion for helping all of Americans who are gripped or struggling with addictions. Richard, it's good to have you on.
Thanks.
America's Hope, and of course you're out there doing a great work at Carrera. Tell us about that and how it's impacting the lives of so many people who are battling against these addictions and fentanyl and so many other things to find a turning point in their lives.
Yeah, well, Carrera is one of one. There'll never be anything like it. It is the single most exclusive treatment facility in the world. So that's only going to help a few people, right? It's for ultra high net worth individuals and CEOs and celebrities and political families, stuff like that, right? What's important is my affordable centers, right? So you can simply call us and maybe for a $500 deductible, get 30 days of the finest care you can get. That is something I'm very passionate about, and we're angling to treat the military. And what's important about that is we're going to pull people right off the streets, right out of their encampments, and we're going to take care of them. And our goal is to take 1,000 a month, because these people, okay, that protect us are the most important. And the reason I say that is because if you don't take care of your veterans, it affects national security. And we can't have that, especially in the times we're living in. Who wants to go to the military if they're going to end up on a sidewalk?
Such a strong point, and I'm glad you're doing that, Richard, because it's definitely needed for our veterans. Look, and because of that, you talked about national security. We've just seen an election that really shocked the world. President-elect Donald Trump is now preparing to start his second presidency. He's dealing with border issues, as you know. He's dealing with fentanyl, which is a scourge on our society, coming to our country, manufactured in China, coming through the southern border, through the cartels that are now manipulating so many of our cities in America because of their power and their influence, and really hurting a lot of people, killing a lot of people because of fentanyl. What do you say about this election and the results?
It's straight up terrorism. The chemicals come from China, then they go to South America, typically Mexico, and they're created there and then smuggled across the border. It's intentional. It's not just on social media that they're dividing us. They're dividing us in every way they can, right? And there's nothing more unnatural than burying your child. So I think and I hope that the president-elect will come into office and give that the attention it deserves. And I think he will, because the man's never done a drug. He's never had a drink, okay? And he's not about this. He's not about it. And can you imagine how beloved Donald Trump would be if he did two things? Dealt with the opioid epidemic so that parents didn't lose their children, and deal with the homeless crisis, because the homeless crisis is not hard and they're both overlapping. Can you imagine the love and adoration that this man would receive?
Yeah, you know, Richard, you're talking about two clashes of culture in regard to drugs and homelessness, and yet they merge together and cause so much in terms of our mental health issues that we have in this nation. So to your point, when you say or ask, can you imagine what it would be like for the Trump administration to deal with these issues simultaneously? So what does that make you, I mean, how do you feel about the deportation that is coming of so many of these illegal immigrants? And look, let's face it, there are some sinister people in this country that we have no track of where they are, but they've come through our borders. And like you said, it's the terrorism aspect. I got to ask you, because you're someone who's dealt with so many different issues, from celebrities to the common person who's still dealing with drugs, and you're looking at let's pull the onion back. You're pulling the layers back, and therein is the rub, because like you said, we've got people coming to this country for the purpose of taking us out through fentanyl and opioid addiction. So this president-elect going into this area, how challenging is that?
Well, I think he's got a handle on that. Okay. One of the benefits, look, everything swings politically. You swing too far to the left, you're going to the right. Okay. And that's where we are today. I'm an independent. Okay. I love my Republican brothers.
I'm independent.
Right. I just hate the people on the far poles. You know, I like the adults in the room in the middle. And as far as immigration is concerned, I get it. Okay. But I don't think that's the real issue. Well,
my point is,
but I do want to say this, Kelly. I do want to say this because it's important. I want to break them. I want to put them into buckets. Okay. Here you have a lot of Hispanics that have crossed over the border that we are completely dependent on agriculturally and so forth. A lot of the jobs that a lot of Americans don't want to do. Okay. That we have to keep. That's a no-brainer. But the people who have committed crimes, whether they are Hispanic or anybody else, those people have to go. And the biggest problem we have right now are the Muslim extremists in our country, because, man, those are the first people that need to go. Okay. Sharia law has no place in this country. None. It's an abomination. And I love that he's going to deal with that. I know he's going to.
You know, you bring up that question, that aspect about Sharia law, but also extreme Islamic extremism. We know that the proxies of Iran, which would be a part of that extreme group, has actually participated. For example, Hamas and Hezbollah, they're part of those cartels, man, that are out there dealing with fentanyl and all these drugs and sending them to our streets in America. So talk to me about the dangers of fentanyl being out on these streets called the United States of America.
Well, that's why I brought up, not that I'm a political talking head, right? But that's why I brought it up, because of their involvement in the fentanyl issue. 70% of all pills and powders now on the street have fentanyl in them. 70%. And the reason it's so dangerous is because you can go out and ask for cocaine, and you're getting cocaine, but it's got a ton of fentanyl in it, right? And now you're hooked. So today, kids are going out on the street thinking they're getting one thing and they're getting another. And that's why people are dying.
What is fentanyl, and why has China capitalized on manufacturing it and sending it here? You're not sure if they're capitalizing on it, but to my point, in a way they are capitalizing on it, because they're actually laboring to make it available and sending it to the cartels, thereby sending it here. So the money chain flows back to China as well as these cartels.
And I know there's a ton of money in it. I don't think that's their motivation. I think their motivation is to weaken us as a country. And that's why this is so important. The one thing I really love about this president is the way he deals with the drug addiction problem that we have here in the country. And I just want to say one thing. I love the fact that you're talking about drug addiction and alcoholism and not substance use disorder. That is a woke thing, okay, meant to soften where we are in our arc of addiction. And I think it's important that you're honest with yourself and you know who you are. I didn't lose 25 years to substance use disorder. I was a drug addict, and I'm grateful for that because that allowed me to know my truth and dig myself out of that hole.
You said that, and I wasn't expecting that. I mean, it reminded me of a friend of mine that I lost to drug addiction, and it's just, it was a shame to see that. So I call it what it is because it is an addiction. So I'm talking to Richard Taite. We'll be back with much more in just a moment. Welcome back to America's Hope. I'm continuing now with my conversation with Richard Taite, one of America's foremost experts on drug addiction. There's a new drug out there, Richard, called, and I hope I'm getting the name right, Fentanyl. And what is it and how does it affect the user?
It's the same thing. It's a synthetic opioid. It's about 50 times stronger than fentanyl. I'm not kidding. 50 times stronger. So same effect. Okay. This is the worst opioid epidemic we've ever had in our history. And it really has to be addressed on a multi-level way about it. It really does. It's the immigration, it's laws around it. You know, in a lot of blue states, in California, for example, do you know if someone gets caught selling fentanyl, we're trying to pass something here called Alexandra's Law. And all it is you're caught dealing fentanyl and you're giving like a traffic ticket. And it says, don't do this again or you're in trouble. We couldn't even pass that here. We couldn't even pass that here. I don't get it. I don't get it.
So you think with the president-elect coming to office, some changes will be coming down the line to our state level and our local level as well?
As you know, we have 51 governments in our nation, right? So I don't know how that's going to fly in California, but I do know he's going to die trying. That I do know.
So, Richard, there's another look. I hate to be bringing up all these drugs, but I think our people need to know the latest headline making drug is pink cocaine. What is that, and why are all of the kids trying it?
It's bizarre. Pink cocaine is not cocaine. It doesn't even have cocaine in it. It's a menagerie of drugs, right, that are all put in there together. Ketamine, sometimes cocaine, fentanyl, this one, that one. There's different mixtures of it. It's not one thing. And it is so dangerous. You saw what happened to Liam, right? He fell out of a window. And that's predictable. Right? I mean, people fall down all the time when they're inebriated. He fell out a window, right? I mean, you'll see when the toxicology comes back. You'll see. He was full of fentanyl. He passed out standing up and fell to his death.
But Richard, the report is with Liam is that he had enablers or people who were there with him, partying with him. You know, we see this happening too often in our society. How do you talk to parents to help them talk to their children even their young adult children about the dangers of these drugs, these synthetic drugs that people are trying?
All right, so let's unpack that in two buckets. The first one is, what do you say to your children? I can tell you what I say to my children. I've told my children over and over and over again, I've had to talk with them about fentanyl. The other day, I'm in the car with my daughter and her girlfriend, and they're rolling their eyes. And so I pull over and I tell them, don't roll your eyes at me. I will talk about this every damn day if I want to. Okay? You're all I've got. That's that. My son is getting out of the car and we're talking about the fentanyl. And I said, close the door, get back in the car. I want to tell you something. And I said, I want to talk about the fentanyl thing. He goes, I'll never do it. I said, I know, but let me tell you how it's going to happen. Someone's going to come up to you with pills or powder, and they're going to want you to participate in that. He goes, I won't do it. I said, I know, hear me out. The reason they're including you is because they want you to co-sign their bad behavior so they don't feel as bad. Do not co-sign anyone's bad behavior. I am in love with my boy. Do you understand? And he said, yes, Daddy, I love you. It's that simple.
Yeah, showing that love and to the point, and making it so crystal clear. And certainly we've heard nightmares of parents who are so bereaved because they've lost their child to an element just like you talked about in that scenario. College student hanging out, being enticed by his friends to sign on or co-sign to their bad behavior. Richard, thank you for sharing that. If a parent thinks that their child is using, what should they do? I mean, who do they turn to?
You got to deal with this now. We're out of time. Okay. And the reason we're out of time is because this is so dangerous. So there is no more, he's growing out of it. There is no more, you got to do it for yourself, which is nonsense. Okay. Not in a top-notch facility with people who know what they're doing. Okay. We're out of time. We don't have, when I was a kid, I had the luxury of experimenting with drugs, and it was a rite of passage. Not anymore. These kids don't have that. They don't get it. And the problem with that is their frontal cortex isn't developed. So you've got these kids walking around without a full executive function of the brain, thinking they're indestructible, because all kids do. Okay. And it's just a bad combo.
I got to bring this up because you talked about it with regard to Liam Payne and Matthew Perry. Many times celebrities, people who have the means, begin to think they're indestructible. But as you were talking about the kids and reminding me of the college experiences that children go through, I'm reminded of talking to Lanice Bias, the mother of Len Bias, incredible basketball player, University of Maryland, on his way to becoming a world-renowned player with the Boston Celtics, and in celebrating in that same scenario to which you described to your son, he was offered cocaine and he died that night. And his mother, Lanice, who I love so dearly, shares the pain and agony, but she's a woman of faith. She found the resolve to forgive and heal, and yet she sent a passionate message to America: wake up, save your children. Now that was 20 plus years ago. And Richard, here we are today still talking about the very issues that are confronting our children and our adults, and the scourge of fentanyl coming across our borders, and other drugs as well. It's like you said, and you have a program about it called, we're out of time. We are out of time, Richard.
Len Bias is probably the best basketball player in college I've ever seen. And he went to the hated Boston Celtics.
Yeah.
And I just can't imagine the pain that a parent has to go through when they lose a child. It is the most unnatural thing we can do. And we all have children. We love our children. This makes zero sense to me. And that's why I'm grateful. One of the silver linings of this election is that we're going to be dealing with a couple problems that haven't been dealt with yet.
I'll take a quick break and we'll come back just with a little bit more conversation with Richard Taite, one of the foremost, man, if you need help, this is the brother you want to call. You want to reach out to Richard Taite. We're coming back with more in just a moment. Welcome back to America's Hope. I'm talking to Richard Taite, and he has a wonderful program that you need to listen to called We're Out of Time. It deals with what's going on in our drug culture in America, dealing with addiction to drug and alcohol, and then abusing it. Richard, there's something about reaching the age of 27, I understand. What's that all about? The list of celebrities who have died at age 27 because of addictions?
Right. I think that's a coincidence, right? It took hold when Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix died in the 70s. And so they had something called the 27 Club. But I'm a product more of the 80s. So Tupac died at 25 and Biggie died at 24. So I think what they're really trying to articulate there is it's hard at such a young age to come from nothing one day and to blow up the next day. And it's hard to resolve that within yourself. And sometimes we get it wrong. And that's what I think they're referring to there.
So in that regard, you were talking about celebrities, and we have discussed that, although we're really trying to send a message to everybody out there. But as you know, P. Diddy is in the news a lot because of his drug-fueled parties, the freak-offs. Does that glorify drugs in Hollywood, or how does that impact our kids who are looking with the allure of being a celebrity and having, the fast cars, the money, the drugs, the sex, and the freak off?
Well, I've probably, Carrera and my last business as well. But, we've treated hundreds of celebrities. I mean, this is considered the celebrity rehab. Hell, we can even bring our dogs here. The problem with celebrity is that, yes, it does glorify it, of course. Everyone, remember the role model commercial with Charles Barkley years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're role models, whether they want to be or not, right? They're role models. And so, of course, it's going to glorify it. P. Diddy was essentially running this town for 20 years, right? Every celebrity has been to his parties, right? That's not a fair statement. A lot of celebrity have been to his parties. The problem with celebrity more than anything is the enablers. And you pointed that out earlier. Anytime you have a manager or an agent, they get paid based on the jobs that they get their client. So if they're coming into treatment and they need 90 days, but these guys aren't making any money and they're trying to get their client back to work in 30 days, that is so common. That happens all the time. So that's why a lot of these celebrities are dying. It's sad, but it's true.
Look, when you're seeing people go through therapy, what's it like, and how do they get through it in order to become sober and stay that way?
This is the greatest thing in the world. When people get concerned about this and they get scared, but they're just afraid of the dark. I'm not asking anybody to dig a ditch or paint my house. Okay. I'm asking you to sit down and be completely open and honest and tell your truth and have the humility to hear what your therapist is saying. When you come to Carrera, it's like getting 3 or 4 years of therapy in 30 days. Okay. And you don't work it. It works you. The program is built to work on you. Right. So, but it takes what it takes. And some people need 30 days. Some people need 45, some people 60 and 90, whatever it is. But it takes what it takes. If I wanted to be a lawyer, but I wasn't willing to go to law school for 3 years, so I'm not a lawyer. Okay. If you want to be sober, you have to do whatever it is you need to do. And it's based on how long were you using? How much were you using? What were you using? These are the factors that determine how long you're going to need treatment for.
But I do like the fact that you have the high end, but then you also have the other end that's reaching out to average citizens who can't afford a career, like, for example, the military veterans that you're reaching out to. That is so important because then you're getting all spectrums of society to that value treatment that they need. I want to go into another aspect of this, and that's faith. Faith and addiction. How important is faith or spirituality in combating the addiction demons that people face?
I live by, I think this is what life is. I think the meaning of life is to be of maximum service to God and to your fellow man. Okay, that's it. And that's why I've got 3 wounded warriors at all times for free in my place. Guys typically refer other active military to me, and we don't have a contract, so it's all, we have to do it for free, but we're waiting for our contracts. But, I don't want to treat 3 or 4 people in the military at a time. I want to treat 1,000 people at a time. And I'm not even looking for referrals from anybody. We'll go find them on the street. I mean, I've got a plan for it, okay, to actually take these heroes off of sidewalks. I mean, it only sounds stupid when you say it out loud, right? Heroes, sidewalks.
Yeah.
It's like, it gets me, I start to shake when I hear that.
Richard, we're talking about a lot of important topics. You talked about President-elect Trump and his administration. Have you ever considered reaching out to him, or have they considered reaching out to you with regard to how to deal with this scourge that's upon our land from fentanyl and drug addiction?
Well, I mean, like I was telling you during the break, right? I just spoke in Palm Beach, Florida, and I ended up on a yacht with people from the Heritage Foundation, the project to elect Trump. And I was sitting there, and what I gathered, first of all, they're all great people and they're all friends of mine now. Okay? But one of the things I like about Donald Trump, President Trump, is that he's not a academic snob. Just because you have the education doesn't mean you have the grit and the knowledge and you're not moving the chains. Okay? I'm moving the chains all the time. Okay? Just keep the chains moving. And I think that he is the kind of person, and you notice it in who he has in the past administration and this administration, he kind of does it like I do it. You look at the person, you get the vibe of them, you determine whether or not they can get this done Are you real or are you not? And then he makes a decision based on his life experiences. And no, I've never reached out to him. Okay. But I can tell you this. If I was ever asked to be on a board or anything like that, I serve at the pleasure of the president, and all credit goes to him. If I was ever asked, a question about that, and I was in that capacity, my statement would always be, I serve at the pleasure of the president, and move on. Okay. It's not important. What's important is the work.
Yeah, the work. The work is so important right now because lives are at stake. The addict who recovers and they're clean and sober, how do you view them in terms of their desire or even responsibility to give back when they are sober? What does that look like, and what does that mean for a community of addicts who need to hear from people who have been through what they have gone through and overcame it and conquered it? When you help an addict overcome their addiction and they're sober and they're now returning to this sense of valuing their life, how do you help them, encouraging them to give back in ways that could be so helpful to people going through what they've just overcome?
They do it by themselves. If you have the right treatment and you take them through that arc, they're going to help anybody they can. Now, they're not going out and being activists.
When they are sober, what does that mean? What does it look like?
Well, what they do typically when somebody gets well and they've gone through hell, okay, they know other people who are doing it and they can gently nudge them into treatment, right? Because they've lived the hell and now they're doing well, right? And so especially like a lot of people say they're doing well. I'm fine. And I'm like, no, you're not fine. Okay. Yale Law School is fine. Okay. You're in rehab. So when they get out of that whole thing where good is good, it's just not bad anymore and it feels good. Right. So once they get to that point, it's just human nature to want to say to another person suffering, hey, babe, I know the way. Come with me. Okay. And then you make the call. The critical thing that everybody has to know is if you've got a kid doing any drugs at all, you have to get them help immediately. Immediately. There's no discussion. There's no debate about it. We're in an epidemic where one time you can take a pill, one time given to them by a friend that they trust, and it's over. You have to get treatment immediately. The end, in stone. That's the end of the conversation.
We'll continue our conversation in just a moment. And welcome back to America's Hope. Continuing now with my conversation with Richard Taite, one of the foremost experts on addiction here in America. So look, we've talked about this extensively, and I think it's important because America doesn't have this conversation enough, and yet we need it. You have overcome a lot yourself. For the sake of transparency, so people really get where you're coming from. What did Richard Taite go through before becoming who you are today?
Well, I started using drugs at 12. I took the pot out of my father's drawer, and I was doing cocaine by 16. Until I was 33, I guess, I was smoking a lot of crack cocaine every time I could afford it because, it's expensive. But I was smoking about an ounce of cocaine every single day. and I would stay up between 6 and 8 days in a row on average, doing drugs without sleep. And I would eat a Big Mac once a week to keep myself alive. So I can honestly tell you, I know what I'm talking about when it comes to the suffering, right? I was homeless, not for a long time, but I was homeless. I was in multiple sober livings. And, you know, when you're in a place like that, you think, or at least I thought to myself, I cannot believe my life has come to this. And you have these moments. You know, when I was in sober living, I was smoking cigarettes. And I remember one night before bed, I hit my knees and I asked God to please take that from me. I couldn't breathe. And the next morning I woke up, and at about 11 o'clock, I lit a cigarette, and I took like 3 drags of it. It tasted like poison. Then a couple hours later, I took another cigarette out and lit that, and it tastes like poison again. And then it hit me. And I look up and I go, no way. Right? And I haven't had a cigarette since that day.
I just want to thank you for what you do, because you're bringing this to the attention of so many people. It's a national conversation that we're not having, yet we're speaking about it on the news. I mean, you're putting in the public eye. You've appeared on Bill Maher's Real Time, and you've been prominently featured in documentaries about prescription thugs and drugs and the addiction expert. I mean, how much more do we have to do to compel Americans to stop using drugs and stop the addictions?
We need more people like you, because I'm willing to have this conversation every day, multiple times a day. Okay. But we need people like you with the platform to ask the questions, right? So that I can come on and educate America. That's what I do. I'm a teacher, right? So we can get another, 1,000 of you. Okay, I think we're going to be okay, and everybody's going to get the message. You know, the problem is today, like when we were kids, we had like 6 channels, right? And then we got cable, and we thought we were in heaven, right? And it's like all the choices. Today, you have that, satellite, every streaming platform, a gazillion websites, a gazillion podcasts. It's like, in order to convey something to the public now, you have to do it all. One of the most genius things that Donald Trump did this time around was he acknowledged it and went on every big podcast he could, right? That's the way to do this thing. That's the way to handle this.
Yeah, you're doing it. And literally, we are running out of time. So talk to me about your program. We're running out of time.
The reason I call it "we're out of time" is because we are, right? Look, when you have children as late in life as I did, you don't just love your children, you love all children. And just the thought of losing my children is more than I can bear. I can't even discuss it. I don't even have an ear for it. Okay. So if I can go ahead and have the conversation like we're doing now and lay it out in very simple, plain language, so that everybody can understand it with not all this nomenclature and nonsense. Okay. Just person to person, right? You're going to get it. It's just, the problem is I don't get to speak to as many people as I would like. But like I said, I would do this all day, every day.
Richard, I thank you. You've become a friend, and you're a respected voice on addiction and mental health issues. And we didn't even get into the mental health aspects, because you know that America and the world is suffering through an anxiety epidemic, as quiet as it's kept. People are hungry for hope. People are hungry for a breakthrough. So my final question to you on that note, and in the vein that we've been talking, is what is your hope for America?
My hope for America is that we can get back to common sense, because we've lost it in a lot of different ways. And we've got a lot of work to do to get back to doing the right thing. That's it. Do the right thing.
That's it. Richard Taite, thank you for being on America's Hope. Appreciate you, man, as always.